if I say anything about the most recent episode of The Mandalorian, I'll spoil it for you. So I'm not saying anything in this attention getter. I'm John Barry, and this is my review of The Mandalorian Chapter 14, The Tragedy. So this is the 6th episode of the 2nd season. So, as you can already see, the episode title alone is kind of spoiling the episode. Probably my only complaint about the title. But a good way of putting how I feel about this episode is, this is most of the stuff that happened in this episode I didn't want, but I love that they did it. Or love how they did it sometimes in some cases. Because, yeah, I definitely don't like that one thing happened, but for the story-wise, I really like the area that it's going to go. So, to begin with, Din and Grogu, I'm trying to get used to saying their names, but Din and Grogu, so the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, arrive on Tython. I honestly was not expecting that. I was expecting for them, before they reach Tython, to be somehow intercepted by Gideon. Well, I do want to say this. They are intercepted, but not before Tython, on Tython, closer to the end of the episode. So, what happens? Well, Din, Grogu, they land on Tython. They go to the Seeing Stone. Din puts Grogu on there. After a little bit, Grogu reaches out with the Force. Din's unable to reach Grogu because of weird Force stuff. Maybe some technology, I don't know. But one thing I noticed, when Din was looking at the stone with his helmet, I noticed that the writing along the stone, which once Baby Yoda reached on the Force, you could actually see, and kind of projected a force field from, which is actually kind of neat. And this writing we've seen on old Jedi temples in various places throughout Star Wars. It was on the original Ralph McCoy concept art. So this writing system is not unique to this episode. It's very much connected with ancient Jedi and even Sith to a certain extent in Legends, at least. But anyhow, while Grogu is doing all this, guess what ship arrives? I honestly did not expect this ship at all to arrive or see on screen. Apparently there was a leak of it like the day before, or that was released. The leak itself was released the day before. I put no stock into it. Like, come on. If this ship was actually seen on set, it's probably for a spin-off show. Nope, it appears in this episode. Normally I wouldn't take leaks seriously, and I still don't, by the way. So, what ship is this? The Slave One. So, yes, Boba Fett. And as we say, I really didn't expect Boba Fett to make a second appearance in this season. I expected it to be a tease for next season, and Boba Fett was going to serve as an antagonist. Well, maybe a little antagonistic, but guess what? By the end of the episode, him, Din, and then of course we get the sharpshooter from the Tatooine episode last season, whose name I forget. But it was one of the bounties that Mando was going after. The sharpshooter was a bounty that Din went after when he needs some credits, but was kind of not on the best terms with the Bounty Hunter Guild anymore. But anyhow, she has confirmed to have been survived, though her stomach has been replaced with a mechanical one. Which this is Star Wars. Luke got a mechanical hand, so why can't something have a mechanical stomach? But anyhow, they came there just so Boba can get his armor, and they make a deal, help protect the child in exchange for Boba's armor. And Boba gets his armor back. He does kind of take it without cementing the deal with Din, but he agrees to honor those conditions. And that is what I think surprised me the most. That now that Boba had his armor, he actually agreed to honor the conditions, even though Din hadn't fully agreed to them. So that is, I think, quite interesting, and kind of a bit of a radical change from the Boba Fett we know pre-Sarlacc. There's a story in there about him getting out of Sarlacc and all that. There's a story there. And I think it's connected to why he never took the armor from Cobb Vanth, even though he clearly knew where Cobb Vanth was and thus where his armor, but he waited till the Mandalorian took it. Why? My hypothesis, if you will, is that Boba Fett was, he somehow either blasted his way out or shot his way out or got spit out of the Sarlacc pit. any kind of hand-wavy thing you want. For all we know, the Sarlacc pit, or the Sarlacc, I should say, in the Sarlacc pit, was attacked by a Krayt dragon. That's how Boba Fett got out. We can do whatever we want. No, doesn't matter. But I suspect that he was laying on the desert. Jawa scavenged off his armor, left him because the Jawas. But then he was rescued by Tusken Raiders, and nursed their health back to them. Reevaluated his life with them, picked up some of their culture and all that. That's what I think happened. He had a formative experience with being rescued and cared for by Tusken Raiders. Because think, he has a cycler rifle and a gaffy stick, if I'm pronouncing that correct, which are traditional weapons/tools of Tuskens. So it just makes some sense. That's my hypothesis. I would love to hear what you thought of that, though. I think that would make an excellent story, a Boba Fett book, or any story, maybe a comic, but I really think this would be a good story to tell, and I do hope they tell it, but not in The Mandalorian, because I want them to tell it outside of The Mandalorian in some other medium, even though my hypothesis might be correct, it might not be, I could be surprised. But, so, obviously, Boba Fett, he's had a change of heart, or at least a change of character, and which is good, because Din is going to need all his help, because he's lost his ship, and he's lost Grogu. Oh, wait, what is that about losing his ship? So, when Gideon arrives, they target the Razor Crest and destroy it. They literally destroy the Razor Crest. Nothing survived. Well, two things of note survived. Two important things survived. The Beskar spear survived, which makes sense, Dan was able to retrieve it from the wreckage, but also the ball that Baby Yoda loves to play with. And actually at the start of the episode we get a scene of Din and Grogu just kind of bonding, having some fun. Din saying Grogu's name, probably one, so getting used to it himself, but also for us, the audience, to get used to it. And and the response of Grogu when he hears his name, it's adorable. It's probably the best way of putting it. But Din holds up the ball, says, "You can have it, Grogu." Grogu uses the Force to get it, and Din does remark this, that Baby Yoda is too powerful for him to train. But I don't think Din, even if Din keeps Baby Yoda, raises Baby Yoda, I don't think Din should ever be the one training him, at least in terms of Force. Also this, I think adults can become Jedi, but they have to become Jedi as adults, not as teenagers. I think that's the worst time to become a Jedi based off of, canon. But anyhow, so it's clear one thing is that Din and Grogu are forming a close attachment and bond. And of course, we do see that attachments can be detrimental in Star Wars, but we also see the reverse. So it probably depends on how healthy the attachment is and all that. But we can really focus on, I think, of this. This is a bonding moment for them to make one, them finding the ball that small little ball among the wreckage of the Razor Crest much more impactful and meaningful. A sense of hope, if you will, that he will get Grogu back. But I've referenced a few times that Grogu has been taken. Well, Dark Troopers kidnapped him. At the orders of Gideon, of course. And of course, Boba Fett was perfectly willing in his ship to blast all those Dark Troopers down. But Din tells the sharpshooter, whose name again I can't remember, to tell Boba Fett, no, we can't risk the child. And Boba Fett doesn't, which surprised me, but he still, followed to see where they're going, and his response is they're back. He wasn't expecting the Empire to be back. And let's remember, he worked for them on a few jobs. So he clearly, and this is only a light cruiser. Imagine how he would have reacted if there was a Star Destroyer. So clearly, we're leveling up the threat a little bit of the Empire, considering that Boba Fett is shocked, this system's under New Republic jurisdiction. Why is the Empire here? So we're clearly making that the Empire is a threat, even though it's actually not a full-size Star Destroyer. And of course, who knows how Imperial doctrine has changed also since the battle of Jakku and all that, and new technologies. So yeah, we get to see Dark Troopers in action. They clearly look to be droids, so they're not, stormtroopers augmented with cybernetics and all that. But we could still be wrong. But looks like they're clearly going for droid-style Dark Troopers, which I think does make some sense. You're low on resources. Droids might be beneficial. There is also some speculation that maybe the Dark Troopers are made of, or at least have Beskar armor. So, kind of a corrupted version of a Mandalorian. Which does make some sense. That still doesn't explain why Moff Gideon wants Baby Yoda, and especially for his M count. So we still got the mystery there, and I'm glad it's kind of a mystery. But it looks like they're going to be keeping Baby Yoda alive because they want a constant supply of his blood, and if he kills, well, he's eventually going to run out of blood. I'm just saying. But that's taking stuff from from 2 episodes ago and speculating on the future, which we don't have enough information to speculate on, actually. Now, Den wants to rescue Baby Yoda. He wants to rescue Grogu. No, it makes sense. Come on. They're basically, father and son. So what do? Well, I should say, Den hitches a ride aboard the Save One. They go back to Navarro. They meet up with Cara Dune, and what they do is they ask her to look into the new public database, which she has access to, for a certain prisoner from the previous an episode in the previous season, a former Imperial assassin, I think it was, because they apparently want him probably for some technical know-how, blah blah blah, so they can get aboard the Star Destroyer. I don't think it's gonna be the case if he betrays them. I'm just saying. But some chaos in there wouldn't be terrible. Spice things up, make sure things last to the end of the season, all that. And then we get a scene aboard Moff Gideon's light cruiser, and that's at least what Boba Fett classifies it as, a light cruiser. So what do we get in there? Well, Baby Yoda, he's in a cell, and he's using the Force to basically throw some stormtroopers around. So yeah, but note to say, he does tap into the dark side by Force choking them. And then Moff Gideon kind of, entertains him, kind of, tries to almost, distract him a little bit, get Baby Yoda, Grogu on at ease. I don't know, but very much I think it's more, the information Moff Gideon says is more intended for us, the audience. But I won't say anything about that in this review. But I will say this much. Moff Gideon then has Baby Yoda stunned and then cuffed. So that way he can't, Force choke and push around stormtroopers more. Also we get a nice good look at the Aquitaine class light cruiser's bridge, which is more sparse than the Imperial, but I think also is a better design myself, in my opinion. But that's a minor thing. But that's kind of concludes the episode. But there's a few things I still want to talk about. We had the fight between the stormtroopers and then, of course, Boba Fett, the sharpshooter, and Din. It was kind of an awesome fight. It felt very much kind of like, a fight you would get in a video game. Very much, move positions, all that. Which is actually more of a distraction so the Dark Troopers can take Baby Yoda. So actually some good tactics on there. Also in that fight we see, Imperial incompetency, even though they're being picked off, the Stormtrooper commander, orders his troops to advance, doesn't go well for him. Boba Fett smashes him with the Gaffi stick, I'm serious, and a few other Stormtroopers and we even get to see a split helmet. We don't see any body parts, but we get to see a helmet obliterate, a helmet destroyed by it, so yeah. He's obviously got some training. That supports my theory that he spent some time with Tuskens. So there's that, and of course they also set up an E-Web, and they have a motor. It looks like a motor from our world, but I like that. I actually really do. Show some, they may not have the same fire support they once had, so they got to look for other ways. So smaller things like E-Webs and motors might be used more by the Empire. The motor with the Stormtrooper launching it, which looks like he had a special pattern probably to designate his training status for being able to operate a motor. But anyhow, it loosens a rock, a sizable rock, so a boulder, and the sharpshooter manages to push it off pushes it and it rolls down the hill, crushes several stormtroopers because they couldn't seem to run to the side, and then the E-Rep guy is probably the most idiotic. He keeps on firing even though and the boulder, I guess, trying to disintegrate it, even though he has plenty of time to jump out of the way, and he gets crushed. Like, how idiotic can you be? But then again, they probably don't have the same training as they once had for stormtroopers, so I'll give them that much. We also see a new Imperial troop ship. I don't know what's going to call, so I'm going to say it's the Imperial troop ship. It very much looks like a predecessor design to the First Order troop lander, the AAL, the Atmospheric Assault Lander. I don't know what this Imperial version is called, but it could be like the Imperial troop lander, the ITL, if you will. And both of these designs are very much based off of the amphibious assault landers used by the Allies in World War II, D-Day in particular. So we're clearly sure that the Empire has new technologies, and I love that. And then we need to talk about Boba Fett. And this is going to be my last point before I end the video. According to this episode, Boba Fett is 100% Mandalorian. At least because his father was a foundling. And then, of course, apparently, at least in Boba Fett's armor, he's able to display like a holographic screen that shows the history of his armor. Says, here's his father. It's complicated. I don't quite understand. I'm not sure if I understand the terminology or how it was used correctly. But it also shows the other previous owners. Now, is that the same armor as Jango's? Well, there is some evidence that says yes, and some evidence that says no. First of all, Jango's helmet was canonically just destroyed in the Clone Wars when Boba put a bomb in it to kill Mace Windu. It failed, by the way. However, I'm pretty sure the Republic kept that as evidence for the trial against Boba, if he even had a trial. The Republic's getting pretty dark during the Clone Wars. So that would mean there's a good chance the Empire has it. And let's remember, Boba Fett has done a few jobs for the Empire, so I wouldn't be surprised if he, took, got the helmet as a return for doing a job. I mean, we've seen similar things in The Mandalorian so far. It's very possible that sometime after Boba Fett fully matured, he reclaimed his father's armor. That's what he did in Legends. In Legends, he did it during the Clone Wars, but it could have been after the Clone Wars because he had buried his father on Geonosis. Or did somebody reclaim the armor for him in Legends? There might have been a couple of ways it was happened in Legends. In canon, we don't have a exact explanation, but this is why I like to think. Boba Fett, as his bounty hunting, he made up his mission to reclaim all the pieces of his father's armor, including the pieces that he purposely destroyed. And then he met a Mandalorian armorer, someone who knows what they were doing, and reforged the armor to maybe better suit him, repair the helmet, that kind of stuff. Because it is very similar, but it is different. And we do know from Rebels that armor not only is passed between generations, but is reformed and reforged for each new user. So and of course, there's also evidence that suggests some Boba Fett's and Jango's armor was made of Dursteel, not Beskar. Though, as we saw in an earlier episode, and actually the first episode of this season, Boba Fett's armor is nothing to laugh at, so it might have some Beskar. And let's remember, in the previous episode, we got the Beskar spear was introduced, and it was said to be made of pure Beskar. And that gets me thinking that there's a good chance that different armors, different sets of Mandalorian armor have different purities of Beskar. Boba Fett's and Jango Fett's might have a lower purity than Din's, which looks to have a very high purity. And, I'm guessing Sabine Wren's purity for her armor is up there, but maybe not as good, because it clearly does show that it can take it does not absorb blaster bolt energy as effectively. True. And let's also remember, the blaster bolt that she got hit with was reflected back at her, so it was from her own blasters, and Mandalorian blasters might actually be designed to better combat Beskar for all we know. So what we have here is the question of, is it the same armor as Jango? I would say it's at least the same material as Jango, the same base material, and Boba Fett's added on. Because it makes sense for Boba Fett to do that. And also, idea that Jango Fett's a founding makes sense. And yes, we had the Mandalorian Prime Minister Armac say that Jango wasn't a Mandalorian, but that could just been him being snobbish at the founding. And I watched Star Wars Explained review before recording my own review, but he suggested that a part of the Mandalorian Civil War was not just should Mandalorians be warriors or pacifists, but also should some Mandalorians be regarded as Mandalorians or not, like foundings. And so that adds some context, like, yeah, Civil Wars are rarely black and white issues. And it would make sense that the Mandalorian Civil War wouldn't be as simple as warriors versus pacifists. But suffice it to say, I think it's safe to say Boba Fett is a Mandalorian, even if he's not accepted by Mandalorians. Didn't accept him as a Mandalorian, pretty much. Don't know how he feels about Boba Fett taking his helmet off. But, he might say, there's a special circumstances with Boba Fett. I could easily see him saying that, because, you lose your armor, especially if it's against your will. I'm just saying. So that concludes this review. And let me know in the comment section down below, what did you think of The Mandalorian Chapter 14, The Tragedy? And man, was it a tragedy of the actions that occurred, not the story stuff, it was great. But the plot events are tragic. So let me know in the comments down below your opinions. Also, feel free to like and rate the video if you haven't done so already and you enjoyed it. Also, consider checking out the links below. We got, Facebook, Twitter, my website, Discord, Patreon, all that stuff. Consider checking them down below. Also, if you haven't followed or subscribed to my channel yet, please consider doing so. And feel free to check out the video or the playlist on screen now. And as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you always.